Hi, welcome to English Composition. I'm Michael Cheng. I'm here with Cher Chen today.
各位同学，大家好，欢迎回来英文作文课程，我是 Cher。
Hello, today in Unit 15, we are going to study an essay that compares two cities, and then after that, you are going to write your own essay that compares two cities.
好，那在这个单元之中呢，我们将会来练习对比的手法，我会讨论2个城市。那在单元的最后，也会请你选出2个城市，以此为题写一篇散文。
All right, now to begin working on our topic of comparing two cities, let's start the writing process by brainstorming a bit about the ideas that we can put into this essay.
好，既然我们已经选定了主题哦，接下来我们会领导各位走过整个的写作的流程。那首先呢，我们先来做脑力激荡的部分。
All right, now our first step in brainstorming is to create a word web that includes all the different things that we can compare when we are trying to decide on a place to live.
好，那在脑力激荡的部分呢，我们首先要做的第一件事情就是写出我们的单字网。那我们在想写出单字网的时候呢，我们必须要先考虑到，如果我们要选择一个地方来居住的话，我们会考虑到哪些事情呢？
All right, so now let's begin creating our word web, and we will begin by just writing a place to live in the center.
好，我们要开始做我们的单字网了。首先，先在这张纸的正中央写上 a place to live.
So now let's think of some of the other basic features that you might consider when you're trying to determine where you want to live.
好，那接下来呢，我们就来加入一些当你在决定你要住在哪里的时候，你会考虑到的一些重点。
All right, one thing that you will think about is the housing situation.
首先，你会想到的是关于房子居住的部分。
You can also think about what the weather is like.
那同时，你也可能会想到关于天气的部分。
Also, the environment around the place where you're going to live is important.
同时呢，你要居住的地方附近周围的环境也是很重要的。
Some people will consider how close the place is to where they work.
有些人还会考虑到说，住的这个地方离工作的地点是否很近呢？
All right. Also, you want to know if there's recreation nearby.
同时，你可能也会想知道房子的附近有没有一些休闲娱乐的地方呢？
Some other things to consider are what the government is like in the location.
那同时，有些人也会想到这个地方的政府怎么样呢？
And finally, if you're trying to avoid someplace very crowded, you might look at how big a population there is.
如果你不喜欢居住在过度拥挤的地方，那你也许还会考虑到这个地方的人口。
Now, let's add some more links to this word web. And so, for example, schools are often connected to housing.
好，我们现在再帮每一个细节再加入更多的内容哦。那比如来说呢，在房屋的部分，学校、学区通常都是属于在房屋这个区块来进行考虑的。
Okay? And then there's some other issues that we can also consider that are related to the environment. So, for example, how much open space is nearby, and then also how much automobile traffic there is.
好，那在环境的部分呢，也许你会考虑到的是这附近有多少的空地呢？那你同时也会考虑到这附近的这个交通是怎么样的状况。
Okay, and then also something related to traffic is pollution. And so if there's a lot of cars, you will also have a lot of pollution. There can also be pollution from other sources such as factories and garbage.
好，那同时我们刚刚讲到交通就会想到交通可能会造成一些污染。除了交通会造成的污染之外呢，还有其他各种各式各样可能的原因会让你周围的环境有污染。
All right, let's expand some other links that we have. And so, for example, the attitude of the local population can be important because you want to live in a place where you are comfortable with your neighbors.
好，那另外我们可以来想想看，关于人口的部分我们可能会考虑到这个附近的居住的邻居他的态度是怎么样的，因为你会希望跟邻居有好的相处。
Okay, recreation can also include different sources such as entertainment, like the movie theaters or clubs nearby.
好，那在关于讲到娱乐的地方呢，我们可能会想到是有哪些娱乐场所，比如说像是电影院或者是一些俱乐部之类的。
All right, and then something like the cost of living can be connected to work, because even if you have a good job that pays well, this can be negated if it costs too much to live near your work.
好，那如果说关于工作的部分，我们可能还会考量到居住在离你的工作地点很近的地方，是否会影响到你的花费因为你如果住得比较近，可能这个地区呢是需要比较贵的这个生活费用的。
All right, and now let's take a look at our final word web. You can see that there are many, many links that are connected to a place to live.
好，把我们刚刚想到的这些想法都集结在一起。各位同学现在在荧幕上看到的就是我们最后的这张单字网了。
All right. Now, another thing that we can do is we can decide what kind of angle that we are going to take in this essay. And for example, there are many reasons why you might want to compare two cities.
好，那接下来呢，我们要做的事情是要想想看，我们在这篇文章之中要采取什么样的一个角度呢？那首先就可能会想想看为什么你要去探讨这两个城市？
And so, for example, you might be planning to get a new job, and then you want to compare the cities to see which city has more job opportunities.
举例来说呢，可能你现在正在考虑要换一个工作，那你这时候你就必须要去想想看，这两个城市哪一个城市会有比较多的工作机会呢？
Another reason is that you could be dissatisfied with your school system, and so you want to compare the educational opportunities in the different cities, or else you might just be trying to decide that where life is better.
OK， 那另外一种可能性呢，也许你正打算要换一个学校那你可能就会考虑这两个城市之中哪一个城市有比较好的教育机会。那也有另外一种可能性，就是单纯的你只是想要有一个更好的生活。
All right, we are actually going to pick the final topic of deciding where life is better, and we are going to compare the city of Taipei now with how Taipei was about 15 years ago.
好，现在呢，我们会来举个例子那我们现在要讨论的是台北市现在的台北市跟15年前的台北市。
All right, so let's start by watching a video, and in this video, we are talking about some of the experiences that I had when I was living in Taipei when I first came to Taiwan.
好，我们接下来呢将要来看一段影片影片呢讲述的是老师当初15年前来到台湾的时候的一个经验以及他现在在台北这个的一些看法。
Okay, let's watch the video. Hi, we're out in Neihu today, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some things that are different between what this neighborhood is like now and what it was like many years ago when I first moved to Taiwan. Now, one thing that's different is this place that I'm standing right now. So, this used to be a river. So, if you were here about 15 years ago, you would be standing right in the middle of a river. But now you can see that it's all paved over, and this has become a park. Now, some other things that are different is if you look along this road, you can see that there are many big buildings along it. In the past, there were no buildings at all. And in fact, if you look back there where that big red building is, that used to be a farm. But now you can see the farm is gone, and we have a big red building there instead. Let's go take a look at some other things that are different in this neighborhood. We're going to go around, take a look at a few other places. So come along with me. Okay, we're at another place now, and this is another area that's different. So if you look around, it's pretty clean in this area now. But in the past, right back here where this black car was, this used to be a big pile of garbage. And if you remember back then, people would leave their garbage on the street every day. And so there are always a bunch of dogs around here or cats around here digging through the garbage, and it was really disgusting. But now, people have to wait for the garbage trucks to come, and they throw their garbage right into the truck. So this area is a lot cleaner than it used to be. Okay, let's go take a look at another area now. Come on. Now this is another area that's different. You can see this is a really busy area now, but in the past there was nothing back here behind me. In fact, if you look back this way, you can kind of see between these two buildings pretty far off in the distance. Well, in the past, this whole area was like that, just nothing all the way out. In fact, you could see the highway from here. Every morning, you could look, you could see if there's any traffic on the highway. And then back behind these buildings, the Jilong River used to curve along before they straightened it up. All right, and now if we go look over here, you can see what we have. These are all these huge buildings now. Okay, so this whole area is filled with big computer companies.
Okay, we're gonna take a look at one more area now. So come along and we'll take a look at the last place. Okay, now this is one last area that's different. If you look back here, you can see that there's a lot of traffic. So in the past, this area was almost completely empty, so there was no traffic at all. And so this meant that if you're waiting here for a red light, as soon as you saw the light turn yellow on the other side, you just go dashing across the street. All right, but now, when the light turns yellow, you have to wait, because if you go dashing across the street, you're sure to have an accident because there's so much traffic going on. Okay, this is all, and we're gonna go back to the studio now.
All right, let's take a little break now. After the break, we will begin working on our essay.
好，我们现在先休息一下，待会回来我们再继续写作我们的文章。欢迎回来，各位同学，我们先来回想一下刚刚我们看到的影片哦。在影片之中呢，老师提到了几个很不一样的变化。比如说呢，一开始的时候，老师说，本来一开始老师站的那个地方在15年前是一条河，但现在呢，它已经变成一片平地，而且呢，四周盖了很多的高楼。那接下来老师还有提到呢，像是本来在盖高楼的地方呢，以前都是一些农田哦，那现在可以看到整个内湖区都是很多的高楼林立哦。然后老师还有提到，就是说关于垃圾的部分过去呢，这个现在停车场那个位置过去曾经是丢垃圾堆砌垃圾的地方，但现在呢已经变得非常干净都是停车啊，就是很干净的一个路边。那除此之外，老师最后还有提到关于交通的部分他就是说这个交通呢现在是非常的凌乱了，因为那路口非常的大，如果你在过马路的时候不小心，可能就会发生一些像是车祸的意外。
All right, so now what we're going to do is continue working our essay by organizing all the stuff that we saw in the video and the things that we brainstormed about into a nice organized list.
好，那接下来我们要做的呢，我们把刚刚从影片中得到的资讯，再加上我们之前脑力激荡想出来的这个大纲我们把它整理起来。那接下来我们就可以开始准备要写论文了。
All right, so let's take a look at the list. And the first thing that we have in our list is we're going to talk about the time. So we're talking about Taipei 15 years ago versus Taipei now.
好，首先呢，我们先在这张表格里面画上这两个部分。我们讲的是15年前的台北以及现在的台北。
And one thing that we can consider first is the weather between these two time periods. And so 15 years ago, it was actually cooler. It felt cooler every day. Now it seems like Taipei is getting hotter and hotter.
好，首先呢，我们先来探讨关于天气的部分。15年前呢，天气感觉是比较凉爽的，但是现在台北市呢，是越来越炎热了。
All right, so now we're going to talk about some factors that are related to the environment of Taipei now and Taipei 15 years ago.
好，接下来呢，我们要针对关于环境的部分来探讨一下这两个时期的台北。
All right, and the first factor that we're going to look at is traffic.
好，第一个部分我们先来探讨的是关于交通的部分。
And so in the past, there were fewer cars. And also because there were fewer cars, it meant the roads were more open and you had many people who were reckless drivers because there was a lot of space to drive.
在过去呢，因为我们车子比较少所以那时候这个路比较大条，车也比较少，因此呢，这个驾驶就显得比较的不小心。
All right, and now because there's so many cars, everybody will follow the traffic directions. But one bad effect of all the cars is that there's no place to park.
那我们会发现呢，到了现在因为车流量比较多了，所以大多数的人呢都会跟这个照着车流照着法律来行进。但是现在的问题就是说，越来越少地方可以停车了。
Right now, another topic related to the environment is open space.
好，另外一个跟环境相关的呢，讲到的是开放空间。
And if we make a comparison between the past and the present, in the past there used to be little farms within the city, and now these farms are all gone, and maybe we have some new parks, but otherwise it's mostly just buildings in Taipei.
好，我们会发现呢，在过去15年前，到处呢都是农田哦，但现在呢，这些农田都已经消失了哦，只剩下零零星星的一些公园。
Right, and let's talk about pollution now. In the past, there was a lot of pollution from garbage that was left on the street. Now, people throw garbage directly into the garbage trucks, but there is more air pollution from cars.
好，那在这个污染的部分呢，我们知道15年前呢，大家都随地乱丢垃圾，所以在路上就可以看到很多的垃圾。但是现在呢，大家都知道垃圾要丢入垃圾车里头，只不过现在相对的来讲，我们的空气污染又更严重了。
Okay, and let's move on to housing now.
好，接下来我们来看的呢是关于房子的部分。
All right, and so we can say that in the past, housing was much cheaper. Now there are more houses, but they're also much more expensive.
过去呢，房子是比较便宜的，但现在呢，房子越来越多了，越盖越多，但是房价却越来越贵。
All right, and also schools are sometimes connected to housing, and we can see in the past there were very large classes in our schools. Now we have much smaller classes.
在学校教育的部分跟房屋也是相关的哦。15年前我们会有比较大的班级，人数比较多，但现在呢，每个班级的人数就相对的比较少了。
All right, let's go on and talk about population. And so we can say that in the past, Taipei was a crowded city, and now it's still crowded.
就人口的部分来讲，15年前台北就已经很拥挤了，到了现在仍然是这么的拥挤。
But if we're talking about the attitudes of the people, we can say that people were more relaxed in the past. But now people are very busy. Sometimes they feel very wary of each other. They're not so friendly.
好，那在态度的部分呢？过去人们的态度是比较轻松的，比较和善的。那到了现在呢，大部分的人的态度都是比较忙碌而且比较不友善。
All right, and then we can also talk about work.
好，接下来讲到的是工作的部分。
And as far as work, in the past there were lots of jobs in Taipei. Now Taipei still is the place in Taiwan that has the most jobs.
15年前，台北市也就已经有很多的工作机会了。到了现在，仍然是全台湾拥有最多工作机会的地方。
Okay, let's go on to cost of living. It was high in the past. It's even higher now.
好，过去呢，在台北市的花费是蛮高的，但是现在呢，只是比过去更高而已。
All right, and let's talk about some recreation that we can have and entertainment, for example. In the past, there were things called MTVs, but they were all shut down. And now we have KTVs instead. We can also watch professional sports teams.
好，在娱乐的部分呢，我们可以看到15年前台北市有所谓的 MTV， 但现在呢，这种 MTV 这个场所已经几乎都不见了，取而代之的呢是较多的 KTV 或者是我们也可以在台北看到一些职业的运动。
Okay, and then finally, we'll talk about government and say that in the past there was a lot of red tape, but now the government in Taipei is much more efficient.
好，那在政府机关的部分呢，我们知道15年前在台北的政府呢，就是会比较多繁文缛节，但是现在呢，我们的行政也会越来越有效率了。
All right, so let's take a moment now, and we will continue our writing process by preparing an outline.
好，那接下来呢，我们再继续我们刚刚的写作步骤哦。现在我们要做的是来写作我们的大纲。
And the first thing that we'll do is we'll make a thesis statement.
首先，第一个步骤，我们先把主旨叙述完成。
And we can have a thesis statement like this one. Taipei has changed a lot in the last 15 years.
好，主旨的叙述部分，我们可以写上这样的句子：台北在过去的15年中改变了很多。
And next, we're going to think about what kind of conclusion we can make. We want a very positive conclusion into a negative conclusion. And so we'll say something like this one: Taipei is making progress as a city.
好，在结论的部分呢，我们可以写下像这样子的句子：台北就一个城市来讲，它是不断在进步的。
All right, and the next thing that we need to do is we have to decide what to put into the body of our paper.
好，下一步我们应该做的事情呢，就是应该决定一下，在主体段落的部分，我们应该写什么东西。
And now remember that our thesis statement says that Taipei has changed a lot. And this kind of change, it can be something good, or sometimes change can make the situation worse.
好，那在关于这部分呢，我们会写到，当然就是改变。那改变呢，有时候会让状况变得更好，有时候会让状况变得更糟。
And so the body of our paper, we can have two big blocks. And one of the blocks can be how Taipei is worse now. And then the second block can be about how Taipei is better.
好，因此呢，我们在我们的主体段落部分可以分成2个区块。第一个区块呢，我们讲到的是台北变得越来越糟是怎么样的糟法；另外一个区块呢，我们可以讲到的是台北变得越来越好，那又是怎么样的好法呢？
All right, so now let's take a look at our complete outline.
好，那我们先来看一下，现在荧幕上出现的就是我们完整的大纲。
You can see that we start with our introduction section.
好，我们先从这个开头的段落开始。
And so we can have something about the general opinion that people have of Taipei.
好，我们首先提出一些大家对于台北一个概括性的看法。
And then we can say here that the next idea that we want to emphasize is Taipei has changed a lot over the last 15 years.
接下来我们要强调的是，台北在过去的15年之中已经改变非常多了。
And then the last idea is the thesis statement that in some ways Taipei is better and also in some ways it's worse.
最后一句呢，也就是我们的主旨叙述我们要讲到的是，在某些方面它是越来越好，某些方面则是越来越糟。
All right, so now let's go on to our body, and the first section in the body are about the things that are worse.
好，那在主体段落的部分呢，第一个部分我们讲到的是越来越糟的部分。
And we can see here that one section will be about the environment, how it's more crowded and there's less open space.
首先，我们先看到是环境的部分是越来越拥挤，而且呢越来越少个开放空间了。
A second negative thing that we can write about is that housing is more expensive.
第二件事可以讲到的呢是房屋的部分是越来越贵了。
And then finally, we can also talk about cars and traffic and say that there's no place to park and that there are also a lot of traffic jams now.
好，那讲到交通的部分呢，我们会提到说，因为车子越来越多，所以停车位越来越少，而且呢，这个交通流量越来越大。
All right, and so now let's go in and talk about things that are better.
好，我们下一步呢，我们来讲的是状况越来越好的部分。
All right, and one thing that's better is that the housing is more modern.
好，那第一件事我们可以讲到的是房子呢已经越来越新潮，越来越漂亮了。
Okay, another thing is that traffic is more orderly.
好，那第二件事呢，我们讲到的是交通是变得更加有守秩序了。
Okay, and then a fourth point is that garbage isn't thrown in piles on the street, instead it's picked up, and this is another improvement.
好，那我们会发现呢，那过去垃圾都是丢在路上，现在呢，垃圾则会被丢在垃圾车里面，这也是比较好的状况。
And the final thing that we can emphasize is that government is much more efficient.
好，那最后一件事我们可以强调的呢是这个政府的行政越来越有效率了。
Right now, let's take a look at our conclusion, and in our conclusion, we can see that progress is being made.
好，在结论的部分呢，我们可以提到的是，这个进步是一直在持续的。
And then also, the city can improve a lot if it keeps moving in the same direction.
那我们也可以提到说，城市呢，它如果继续照着同样的方式去进步的话，我们可以表现得越来越好。
Okay, now we are going to take a little break, and we will be back with more English composition in a moment.
好，我们先休息一下，待会我们再回来。
People always complain about Taipei. They say it is a crowded, ugly, polluted, and chaotic city that is just getting worse and worse.
人们常常抱怨台北，他们说台北是个拥挤、丑陋、被污染的，而且混乱的城市，而且是越来越糟。
Taipei has certainly changed over the last 15 years, and while some things about Taipei are terrible, it has also improved in some other areas.
的确，台北在这15年中变了样子。有些事情显得非常糟糕的时候，台北呢，同时也在很多地方有了改变。
You cannot deny that in some ways Taipei has declined. The most obvious area is the environment. Every place is more crowded than it used to be.
台北的状况每下愈况是不容否认的，最明显的就属于环境了。每个地点都比以前更加的拥挤。
There used to be small farms around the city, but now every open piece of land is in demand. So housing prices have skyrocketed, and high-rise apartment or office buildings are springing up everywhere.
过去在城市的周围还有一些小农田围绕着，但现在每一块空地都必须被拿来使用，因此房价一飞冲天，高楼大厦也比比皆是。
The traffic is another problem. It used to be easy to drive from one side of town to the other, and there used to be many places to park.
交通是另外一个问题的所在。过去从城市的一头开到另一头是很容易的，而且停车位也很多。
Now, although there is no place to park, the roads all seem like parking lots when you're trying to get across town during rush hour.
现在虽然不再遍地都有停车位了，但是当交通的尖峰时刻穿越城市的时候，你会发现道路还是像停满了车一样的拥挤。
But on the other hand, not everything in Taipei is so terrible. For example, the housing is more modern and better constructed than it was 15 years ago, even if it is more expensive.
但另一方面来说，并不是在台北的每件事都这么糟糕。举例来讲，尽管房价比较贵了，但是房子的建筑比起15年前来更加的新潮，更加的坚固。
And all the modern office buildings make Taipei a stronger commercial center.
这些新潮的建筑和办公大楼也让台北变成了商业中心。
The traffic is also more orderly than it was 15 years ago. First of all, the MRT system makes it easier to get around the city without a car or motorcycle.
交通比起15年前也更加的井井有条。第一点，捷运系统让不开车或不骑车的人更方便在城市中穿梭通行。
In addition, the traffic situation is not in such disarray anymore since the majority of drivers usually follow traffic regulations.
此外，交通也不再那么混乱了，因为大多数的驾驶都会遵守交通法规。
In the past, drivers would often ignore traffic lights, and even if they did stop, they would often dash into the intersection as soon as the traffic lights turned yellow.
过去呢，驾驶常常忽略红绿灯，即使停车了，驾驶们也常常在黄灯一亮的时候就冲出路口。
Taipei is actually cleaner too. You no longer see huge mounds of garbage on the street corners every evening.
台北也比以前更加干净了。每天晚上，你不会在路边看见堆得像小山一样的垃圾。
And finally, the government is more efficient. The workers in government offices are much more efficient and courteous than they used to be, and much of the red tape associated with government bureaucracy has been cut.
最后，政府也更加有效率了。比起从前，现在的政府员工比较有效率，也比较有礼貌。很多政府机关的繁文缛节也都省略了。
Although the city is overcrowded, progress is being made. The city is no longer as chaotic as it used to be.
虽然这个城市过度的拥挤，但它还是一直在进步。这个城市不再像从前一样混乱不堪。
If the city keeps heading in the same direction and becomes more orderly and more modern, it will have a bright future as an important city in the 21st century.
如果台北能继续朝这个方向发展，它将会在21世纪变成一个重要的大城市，而且拥有光明的未来。
Okay, let's talk now about the homework that you are going to do.
好，接下来我们来看看各位同学回去的回家作业。
All right, so first of all, review the material that we had in this unit.
好，首先呢，请各位同学先复习一下我们在这个单元中讲到的一些内容。
All right, make sure that you do the grammar exercises and also do the writing analysis exercise.
好，确定你把文法练习以及这个写作分析练习都完成。
And then for the writing activity, you should write your own essay about 2 cities.
好，那在这个写作的部分呢，请你们要选择自己的2个城市来进行写作和比较。
All right, and so you can just pick whatever cities you want to explore, or else you can write about 2 different times.
好，那各位同学可以选择2个不一样的城市来做比较，或者是呢，就是同一个城市，只是2个不一样的时间。
All right, thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you again next week.
谢谢各位同学的参与，我们下周再见。